Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jeff from Today's Craftsman, and today we're going to show you how to save some money. So we're going to take rough lumber, turn it into S4S, and show you why you've been paying too much at the home store.
Promotional support for this episode is provided by Quick Screws. Since 1987, Quick Screws has been a leader in both quality and performance. With warehouses in California and South Carolina, Quick Screws can deliver anywhere in the U.S. within 4 days. Quick Screws' highly trained personnel are ready to get you the product you need when you need it. Find out more at quickscrews.com.
Let's get into the process of processing rough lumber if we were building a project in the shop. So let's pretend that we're going to build a cabinet door and it's going to be painted. So we're not going to be really worried about grain matching on this. That's another video. If you want to see that, let us know. So a cabinet door, full height cabinet door for a base cabinet is going to be, say, 30¼ inches high. So we can put a pin in that. We have 4/4 here. It's about 14 feet long, and 4/4 is in the rough is going to be at least an inch thick. So some of these are like right on at an inch. Some of them are like an inch and an eighth. So the hope with 4/4 is that you're able to finish at 3/4 of an inch. 4/4 is the rough dimension. So you may have seen 3/4 material referred to as 4/4. That's because it started out like this. It started out at 1 inch and then it was dressed down to 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to make some 4/4 S4S. I would make a parts list and I want to cut my parts to rough length first. Joining a long board is not easy, and if you don't have a large joiner, it gets progressively more hard the larger you get. So I would have a list, and you're going to want to mark your parts out. So if it was a stain grade job, you're going to want to pay attention to all the grain. You know, it's a little harder than S4S to see what's going on, but you know, you can see it's pretty clear where the grain is. So if we're making a door, let's say normal rails and stiles. So 7.5 is going to be plenty for two stiles, 2 rails. You want to start looking at the ends of your board. So here we have this big check, and it goes all the way up to here. So we're going to want to come past our check, and if our door is going to be 30¼ say you want to oversize by an inch on either side. So 32¼ you can make a mark, and typically I'd be marking this like A, 2. This is going to give me 2 of part A, which are the stiles of the door. And then the door is 12 inches wide, so we need a 14-inch piece here for our rails. And that's going to be B, 2 pieces. So after you have all your lumber marked out, we would literally go through the whole stack, making sure that we had all the parts, checking the grain, checking both sides of the boards to make sure that we don't have a big knot or something that's in the way. You can see this is nice and clear. You know, you want to always check your checks as well, make sure they're not further on one side. Once we have everything marked out and some extras, you always want to mill a couple extra pieces or pieces that you can use to set up your machines later. We're going to cut this to rough length, and we're going to do that at the miter saw. My board is over here at the saw, and now we can chop it up. I'm going to give you a tip for cutting rough lumber. So you can see that this isn't going to sit tight up against the fence because it's got a little bit of a bow to it. And if you try and cut through this in the normal fashion, it's going to want to bind up. So I can show you the way that I do it to prevent that. So first thing you want to do is make your cut all the way with the head of the saw all the way back, and then you can make your cut. What that's going to do is going to give some space here that prevents it from binding. So come in. So because we made that 1/8 inch cut in the back, the board has some room to flex. If you try and start here and cut through all the way, it's going to bind up in the back. So we can just cut our pieces now. And I'll flip this one around. Typically, we're going to have a whole table or a whole cart full of parts. This is a light day in the shop if all you're doing is milling up 2 pieces. So once we have them cut, what I would actually do is label the ends of these. So use a Sharpie there. Here we use pencil because we don't want it to bleed into the wood that we're going to keep. So I would mark here B2, and I mark both ends. If you're doing a job where you have, say, 1,000 board feet of lumber, I know not everybody is dealing with that much, but we've had jobs with over 1,000 board feet of lumber in the project. You really need to keep your parts organized because you can forget what's what, and it's nice to be able to see what the part is from both sides of your table. So we have A2 and B2, and now we can head over to the joiner. Over here at the joiner, this is a 10-inch Oliver, and we have a Shelix head in here that we put in aftermarket. So segmented cutter, which makes things a lot easier, a lot quieter, gives you a cleaner cut when you have squirrely grain. Not everyone has such a wide joiner, so before you get to the joiner, you may have to break these down on the bandsaw to get them a little bit narrower. We're lucky enough that these 7.5-inch boards are going to go through no problem. So we can set our fence. And we have our height set to, looks like about a 64th. We can make that a little bit heavier. I usually like to take about a 32nd. Now we need to read the grain before we start to joint. So even with the helical head, it's important to read the grain and figure out what side you're going to joint and what direction you're going to send it. So we could put our little board to the side for now, and we could start to look at this board. So first you want to determine which side you want up. So I already know that I want this side up. You can see we have a lot of side-to-side rock with that side down. We want the most stable side down. This has some diagonal twist to it, but side to side, it's hard to see, but side to side, it's much flatter than the other side. So you want the most stable side down, and then you need to decide which direction. So I do this by feel on rough lumber. I feel both directions, and I'm feeling for the hairs on the wood. Sort of like, you know, if you're petting a dog, this is petting with the fur, and this is petting against the fur. You don't want to pet the dog against the fur. You want to go with the fur. So all the fibers are sticking up this way. So that's the direction that we want to feed it. We want that side in the front so that the cutter is going with the grain, not against the grain. So we have our depth set. We have our board in the orientation that we're going to feed it. We can turn on dust collection. I just won a new dust collector in an auction, so this is going to be going away. Turn it on. So that's pretty flat. We'll take it one more just to get it a little cleaner because we have a lot of thickness here. So nice and clean. I guess we better join our other board. Now I always try and go the same number of passes because now if I leave this board with one pass, it's going to be thicker than that other board. Nice flat face. Can listen. Nice and flat, sounds flat, looks flat. You might think you go right to an edge and join an edge, but I like to wait until we have two parallel faces. I don't want to be shoehorned by this face. So with this face, I can only send the board this way or this way, and that might not work best with the grain that we have going. So I like to plane my parts first. So we can go over to the planer and make these parts parallel. We're over here at the planer. This is a 15-inch Powermatic, again, with a helical cutter head. I think it's like a PM15HH, they call it. Decent little planer. It's been working well for us. We went from a 20-inch, but the 15 has been serving us well. And we can plane these up. So we have our flat surface here, and that's going to be referenced on the table of the planer. And we're going to bring this down until we reach close to our desired thickness, which is 3/4 in this case. Right now we are at about 15/16, so we have a little ways to go. So what I do is I bring my table up, and I like to take a 30-second at a time. If I have a lot to remove, I might take more in the beginning, but we'll go pretty easy on it this time. So I'm at 7/8 heavy there. Something that you want to do on the planer is butt feed. So you're going to feed one part in. As it begins to enter the machine, you're going to feed the next part right up to it. So you can set up your machine to have 0 snipe, but the reality is, you know, they lose calibration and you end up with snipe. There's snipe on this machine. So if you butt feed, the only boards that will have snipe will be the front of the first board and the back of the last board. So A, it saves you time because you have no space between the boards. You're putting more through faster, and you're eliminating that snipe. So again, we'll turn on dust collection and send these through. I'll leave the dust collector on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to bring this down until I have a clean face. So you see we still have some rough here. This one's pretty clean, but we'll do another half a turn and we'll run these through again. So now we can see where we're at thickness-wise. You can use calipers here if you want. So right now we're at just a tick below 7/8. So we want to remove another 1/8 of an inch from these, but we have two clean faces. So now what we want to do is we want to alternate sides. So now we want to take this board, flip it over, run it through, because we always want to remove an equal amount or as close to equal as we can from both faces, because otherwise we're going to throw this board into a weird moisture imbalance. So your rough lumber, you know, it has more moisture in the center because the outside has been exposed to all that air and the moisture has been able to evaporate out. So if we take a 30-second off of the top and a 1/4 inch off of the bottom, then the spot where we took less is going to be drier. Your board's going to cup. So you want to take equal amounts. So we'll probably fast forward through this, but we'll take this down to 3/4. That's a thin 3/4. Okay, so we're making 5/8 material today. I don't know what got lost in translation there. If I just take two 1/8 inch passes. It's been a long day. Anyway, the thickness doesn't really matter for this this demonstration. So we'll call this 3/4. We have two boards at 3/4. In my shop, I'm going to leave these a little heavy and run them through the sander. But typically you're not going to be doing that. So the next step is to go back to the joiner. Back at the joiner to joint our edges. First step is always to move your fence over, so we don't need all 10-inch of the cutter head exposed. It's dangerous. We'll bring this over as far as we can. In this case, it's just a couple inches, maybe 3 inches or so. And again, we need to read the grain and decide which direction to feed. So your best bet is to go with straight grain. So this is pretty straight grain there. This is actually pretty straight too. And again, you want any bow to be in the center. You don't want to put a teeter-totter on there. You want something that's going to be stable. So these are both pretty stable. You can see this edge flying up a little bit and the back. So I think the other side is better. That's why I like to plane before I join edges, because I have all that flexibility. There's 4 different orientations that we can joint the edge of this board versus just 2. So when you're joining edges, I keep all my pressure to the fence, and not heavy pressure that you're going to distort the fence, but just let the weight of the board keep it down, because we're making a 90-degree corner. This is 90 degrees to the table. So we don't want to push the board and get it to pull away. We want to keep the pressure against the fence. So in that case, it only took 1 pass. Longer boards are typically going to take multiple passes because they'll have more of a crown to them. Last step to bring this to S4S would be to rip one edge. The table saw is currently spoken for, so we're not going to do that. This is about the size of a 1x8. So we're at 7.5. Bring it down to 7.25. You have a 1x8. We just did the calculations. So this board right here, $3.88. It's about 1.65 board feet. This board purchased from Lowe's. We looked at Lowe's prices. In poplar, not cherry, $14. So this is, what is that, 3 times cheaper? A little bit more than 3 times. You know, it took a little bit of labor. I think real time, that was what, John, 12 minutes? Yeah. It's only 1 board, but you could see how when you have a lot of boards, you know, it's there's going to be some economy of scale there. So $3.88 versus $14. Tell us what you think. Is it worth it? You could be using cherry in your shop versus poplar. And don't forget, these lumber suppliers have S4S capability, so you can order a pack of rough lumber, have them surface it for you, and I can guarantee you you're still going to be cheaper than $14 for a board like this. Leave a comment, let us know what you think. We'll talk to you next week.